We're not live yet, huh? Now we're live.
Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Alan. Happy day after Mother's Day.
Yeah, did you
Carol.
guys have a good day?
Yeah, very good day. This was this was probably like the first year that I actually felt on top of it. As far as like getting a gift to my mom ahead of time, thought out, couple weeks in advance, like the card in the mail, the everything executed like a week before Mother's Day actually happened, which is not my normal MO.
Well, I will represent everyone else then, because I was not. I did. I'm very fortunate. My wife is very generous to tell me. So she sent me a text about 3 weeks ago and said, "Hey, this is what I want for Mother's Day," and immediately I bought it and got it and put it away.
Nice.
And then, of course, come yesterday morning, I'm like, okay, where did I put it? Like this panic of, I know I got something. I know it's what she wanted. Where is it at? So I had to go back into my text messages and find that text. Like, oh, okay, that's what I bought. Now where did I put it? I had to go hunt it down and then package it up and give it to my son. Have my son. Yeah, I was not as prepared. I did talk to my mother on the phone, so I feel like, and we're gonna potentially take my mom and dad to dinner, and I'll tell you an interesting story. And so my dad's brother passed away a couple weeks ago, and it was very hard on my dad, but he was also very thankful. He had Alzheimer's, and he was just not doing good, and he passed pretty quickly and pretty peacefully. And so, well, my dad had made a commitment to my uncle to take him from Bakersfield, where we're at, back to Henderson, where his grandkids are at. And my dad, for whatever reason, felt strongly that he needed to do it personally. And so he got the right vehicle, and my dad was going to the mortuary, picked up the casket and drive it to Henderson. And so he had everything prepared, and the mortuary gave him the dimensions of the casket, and everything was great. And then my dad showed up, and the casket was bigger than they said. Didn't fit in the truck.
Okay.
So panic ensued, and my dad called me, and I got to go over and help him get a trailer, paint the trailer, carpet the trailer, cover the trailer. Yeah, so very interesting Friday afternoon.
Yeah, I'd say so. And I assume everything went well on the drive to Henderson.
Great. It went great. Everything got there fine. The mortuary in Henderson really served my parents well. Showed up at 9 o'clock to receive the casket, and so. But they got back from Henderson Sunday on Mother's Day and decided they didn't want to go out. And
gotcha.
So
it's
a long story to tell you why I didn't take my mom to dinner, but that's why I didn't take my mom to dinner.
It's a bit of a crazy story. That's like one of those things that you don't really ever think about.
Well, think about this. How often do you think you're driving down the road and the trailer that's next to you has got a casket in it? I mean, you see if you see a hearse, but it's like, that's, okay, it's acceptable, but
right. Yeah, it's like being on a plane and thinking about there's something on most planes. There's probably someone.
I've never thought of that, Jeff. But now every time I get on a plane, I will think about that.
Yeah, it's probably pretty common. Well, I'm sorry for your father and your family's loss. That's tough.
Yeah, thank you.
But it's awesome that his wishes were honored, and your dad, I'm sure, felt blessed to be a part of bringing his brother home, right, to Henderson.
Yep.
Yeah, we my kids are like, when I say like teenagers, one of them is 15. He is a teenager. The other, my daughter, so Eli's our oldest. He's 15, straight on teenager right now. Awesome guy, but just remember what it was like when you're 15. And our daughter is turning 13 in just next month, so I say we have two teenagers. Getting them to wrap their heads around Mother's Day and to like put the effort forward, to think forward and plan and all of that. That's been my challenge. But we had a good Mother's Day. We took Jess, did everything yesterday she wanted to do. It was an awesome day at church, actually, because yesterday was baby dedication day, which is once a year at a church. And so it was an all-out mom celebration yesterday at church, which was cool. Hey, big day coming up this week for us. Big week in general, but Wednesday, of course, is going to be the highlight of my week. I'm guessing yours as well.
Yep.
Episode 3, virtual workshop. Excited. It's going to be Benson on the docket for Opto 22. And he's going to show the solution guided by Kevin Jones with Ectobox and David Schultz with Matrix. Solution's going to get shown that you've actually used personally, right?
Yeah, I was. It's just something that I really had. It was a problem that the company I worked for at the time had been dealing with for years. It's we have thousands of these legacy PLCs, and how do you we weren't looking to protect them from, like, they're not on the internet, right? We had a very mature Purdue model protection in place, but what we did as a company is we created this really hard shell around our OT network, and we were very mushy in the middle. So if somebody could get through that outside shell, and you could now get access to critical equipment, even though you weren't in that plant, because you had that east to west access that. And so
to explain to those that aren't familiar with you, Alan used to work in upstream oil and gas. He's talking about, think of just the vast geographic area of an oil field, all kinds of remote locations, and at each of these wells, what do you have, Alan? You've got a cabinet with PLC in it, secured by maybe a chain link fence if you're lucky around the site, and then a small lock.
You'd have. Well, we had 10,000. We had 10,000 wells across our company, and then from those wells, you take the oil, the water, the gas that you're producing, and those go to test units, and it goes to a dehy, which a dehy is just a dehydration. So you're taking the water out of the oil, and then so you have all these processes from the well. But what happens is you have all these remote locations that have like a test unit, and that test unit will be out in the middle of nowhere, and it'll have a cabinet that has a simple master lock on it, and it's a fiberglass cabinet sometimes, right? So with a $5 hammer, anybody with a white truck can drive up to that test unit, and nobody will say anything if you have a white truck, by the way, and take a $5 hammer, knock that lock off, and then now all of a sudden you've got access to an Ethernet cable. That Ethernet cable is our OT network. And now think about the reality of somebody. I've done this, not maliciously, but I've bought a Raspberry Pi. I literally went through about an hour and a half of setup to where I created a VPN tunnel using that Raspberry Pi. And then I gave access to people to come into my home network, and I isolated like 4 or 5 IP addresses we had some equipment hanging off of. We'll take that same concept, take a Raspberry Pi, go out to one of those panels, plug that thing in. It has, you can have, whether it's an LTE radio or some kind of Wi-Fi access to that device. Now you can sit, 50 foot away and have access to that Raspberry Pi and that entire OT network. And you're not even in the cabinet. You're literally isolated yourself, 50 foot away, and now you can do whatever you want to do. So that's what we were trying to protect.
So we're talking about shifting the focus from where most companies are already obviously doing a great job of watching for access from more of that top-down threat, right? That outside network threat. But this is more about
bottom up.
Yeah. Can you really protect yourself from somebody gaining access somewhere inside of your network?
Right.
Especially when you have a physical, geographic spread out remote assets. Probably not, right? If somebody really wants to get access to a piece of equipment, they likely could figure out a way to do so. But how do you keep that piece of equipment on your network, but isolate the threat of someone having access to that piece of equipment, giving them access to everything else? Is that
Yeah,
the
and
concept?
that was part of our desire. But you know, and actually, we ended up finding out. We ended up finding out that we were causing all the problems ourselves. So it wasn't all the outages we had because of network issues came from us trying to do pen testing in our control network, or came from us trying to do scanning, like non-passive scanning, to find out, hey, is there somebody in our network, right? And a denial of service injected by ourselves brought down our entire control system multiple times. Right. Well, now can you put some protection in your network to keep that from happening on your critical equipment? Right. So can you segment off the critical equipment and keep it from not people that are even being malicious within your company, but just make mistakes within your OT network that could bring down critical equipment, right? So there's all kinds of ramifications on why we wanted to put a device in front of critical PLCs that were legacy for the purpose of protecting that equipment from all kinds of different impacts to your OT network. So that's what, a couple years, well, I'll say 6 years ago, I started on this journey working with a vendor, and we got really close. We got almost there, but we ended up having to use a mapping table. So you'd have to have the legacy PLC had its IO, and then the device that sat in front of that PLC had its own IO, and then you had to have a mapping table so that, this register equals this register. And we just couldn't get around that, and we just canned the whole idea and threw all of that tech out. And then I saw Benson Hoagland from Opto do a presentation where he had if you've ever seen his lab, he's got a Siemens, an Allen Bradley, and he's got his Epic PLC. And he showed how he kind of segmented those off. Yep. And took me about a year of convincing him that it's great you can segment off legacy PLC, but you're not giving access to your remote technician who has to get access to that legacy PLC once you do segment it off. And so what we're going to be showing on Wednesday is how we accomplish that, how you can put an Epic PLC in front of and legacy PLC, segment that off so it's completely segmented even from your own OT network, but then using Ignition, actually send a command that will build out a conduit that will give you access to the legacy PLC for a critical time period, 2 hours, whatever you set that up as. And then the technician can be 1,000 miles away and still get access to that equipment and troubleshoot it and make changes. And Ignition sits in the Epic PLC, so there's no longer a need for a mapping table because Ignition, using their drivers, automatically brings in the IO, and it's awesome.
Well, I'm super excited about it. And I think this is going to be one. Registration is lighter than I expected on this one up front. And we're about 110 people registered for the event, but I have a feeling that the post recording of this is going to get shared a lot, because there's an entire group of men and women that once they understand how they can solve this problem are going to get instant value.
I want to document that I'm going to be sharing hopefully today, which kind of is going to break down what the technical piece we're doing, but explain it with a house, like your own household internet, right? Like that's all we're doing here. We're literally using best practices to keep bad actors from getting access to your personal computer in your home. And how are we doing that?
Very cool. Hey, I want to share a kind of a cool story I saw this morning. Reshared it on my own LinkedIn if you want to find it and deeper into it. But it's an article from Wired Magazine. Blew my mind. I like, it shouldn't surprise me at this point that there's all kinds of really smart people doing really cool stuff. I don't know why when something comes to light like that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe the world we live in. But like, this is just what a lot of people do is their job. Wired magazine article. Title of it. I have to get over to my other side here. Scientists know how you'll respond to nuclear war, and they have a plan. So, well done, whoever wrote that article, but or that headline. But basically, in the greater DC area, which is where I'm right outside of where I was born, outside of greater DC metro area, they've got so much data available to them from how residents move during the day. So they're able to use machine learning and AI, big data. We'll just say big data, to feed machine learning and AI to pattern how people will respond if there was a nuclear attack on Washington, D.C. So the first part of this, the article explains that they use data from the same type of big data that marketing companies buy, right? Like all the stuff Google and Amazon and Apple makes and Facebook and all the socials make public and sell. Data about what my house looks like as far as, do we have kids? Am I married? What age am I? Where do I go each day? What are my habits? They use all of that data, and they're able to basically say, well, this is what this neighborhood's like. It's comprised of these types of families or individuals, and this is what this neighborhood's like, yada, yada. And then they categorize using psychological studies what are the 6 most common responses to a big event like that. And then they apply that based on the breakout of all of these neighborhoods and run these models on if there was something like who are the flights, who are the fights, who are the stay-in helps, who are the shelter in place, who are the I've got to get to the pharmacy and buy this stuff, who are the I'm headed for the mountains. And so they run traffic patterns, they run all of this with weather patterns, and they do fallout, and they make predictions. And then they study those predictions and decide how they could do early warnings and how they can essentially disseminate information from the government's perspective to lessen casualties. It's fascinating. The thing about the article that just jumped out at me, and I'll just read this 2 sentences, talks about the amount of data and the processing that they need. It took more than a day to run this model. It produced 250 terabytes of data.
Wait, the model produced that much data? It's not the data they used to create that. Okay.
No, it produced 250 terabytes of data, took a day to run, and that was taking advantage of a new 8,600 core cluster recently donated by NASA. I'm rocking an M1 chip on this new MacBook, and I'm like blown away how fast. I would describe it as snappy. I don't know how you describe an 8600 core supercomputer, but somebody has a pretty cool toy in their lab, and we need to find them. Hey, just by some crazy weird off chance, if this one day gets in front of you and you are one of the men or women on that team, can we please have you for an integrated live session?
Yeah, we just want you to open up the hood and show us everything.
Just want to see everything. I'm sure it'll be okay. We have credentials. Alan, it's top of the hour for me. I have to jump off and get the rest of my day started. I know you do as well. Looking forward to Wednesday, and buddy, can't wait to kick it off Wednesday morning with you.
Let's do it.
10 o'clock Central Time. Hope to see you there. Have a great day, everybody. See you, Alan.